another. But we cannot deceive Jesus. I know your works. And let me tell you, friends, Laodicea is in the time when the works will be tested. Laodicea is at the very time when fires will be kindled, the fires of persecution, the fires of false doctrine, the fires of, political and economical strife, and the fire will test what? The life. I ask you, what are you building on? What is your life like? I often think of myself, would I continue to stand here if my life was projected there before I preached? You don't see me, but God sees every second of my life. And He says, I know your works. What does He know of you? What does He know of you, dear friend? Let me tell you, we do not stand above each other here. We are all part of this group called Laodicea. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10, we read the following. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 10. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive the things done in the body according to what he has done, whether good or bad. Friends, I cannot judge you. Neither you must judge me. Why? Because there's only one who is the great judge of all, and it's Jesus Christ. And Laodicea, you and I are living in the day of judgment. In the day of judgment. So, that phrase, I know your works, refers to the intimate knowledge that Jesus has about everything you are, who you are. You don't need to lie to God because He knows who you are. Amen? And in spite of the fact that He knows who you are and He knows you intimately, He sends you a message because He loves you. Isn't that wonderful, friends? 2,000 years ago, before John closed the canon, Jesus said, look, I want you to write a message for Pastor Zembraga. He is going to be wicked and proud and selfish, but I love him. And if he hears my message, he'll be fine. And he'll dwell with me, and he'll develop the most intimate communion with me that any other human being has developed. And he will become a king and a priest forever in my temple. Isn't that beautiful, friends? We must not only look at the negative, but we must look at the positive. The fact that Jesus is faithful, full of faith. He looks at you and He doesn't see the rough, grumpy old fella. He sees the beautiful person in the likeness of Jesus. Amen? That's what He says. Dear friends, let me tell you something. If Jesus saw nothing good in us, He will not waste the time in sending a message for us. Amen? The problem is that we don't want to hear the message. The problem doesn't lie on God's side. The problem lies on the church's side. Amen? So are you willing to hear the message? Are you willing to hear what the Spirit says to the churches? Did you go home last night and ask the Lord to show you the true picture of who you are in spite of the pain? I hope you've done. I have. Well, here comes the revelation. Revelation 3:15 says, I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. What does Jesus know about Laodicea? Jesus knows about Laodicea that Laodicea is neither cold nor hot. But Pastor, I grew up in the Adventist church. So did I. That doesn't make you hot. If you were born in a McDonald's, that doesn't mean you're a Big Mac. Or if you were born in a mechanic's shop, that doesn't mean you're a car. True? If you were born in the Adventist church, that doesn't mean you are immediately converted. Or because you've been 30, 40 years in the Adventist church, that doesn't mean that you've kept your first love. Dear friends, deny what you think about yourself and take what God says about you. Amen? Let Him break you. Let Him pulverize you as you fall on the rock. And Jesus says, I know that you are neither cold nor hot. This phrase is repeated 3 times in those 2 verses. Jesus says, I know that you are not cold, neither cold nor hot. I would you were cold or hot. And then in verse 16, because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot. 3 times. It's the only statement in this whole message that is repeated 3 times. Not once, not twice, 3 times. In a good Hebrew mindset, John is telling us this is the heart of the matter here. What does it mean to be cold? Hot. What is coldness in the spiritual concept? And notice the results. We'll look at first what it means to vomit. Jesus says, but I would you were cold or hot, but because you are neither cold nor hot, I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. Do you know that there is no stronger picture in the whole of the Bible than that one? Did you ever imagine Jesus being stomach sick and vomiting? You know what makes Jesus sick? It's a lukewarm Christian, a Seventh-day Adventist. Jesus looks at us and He goes, "Ugh." Beautiful picture of the Adventist church, isn't it? Beautiful picture of Pastor Braga, who thinks himself to be so righteous. Did you ever think of that? Jesus says, I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. What does that mean? Well, there's a number of texts that speak about vomiting. Come to Leviticus chapter 18, verses 26 through to 29, and they will enlighten us in regards to the meaning of vomiting. Leviticus chapter 18, verses 26 through to 29. We are going to look at this aspect of vomiting as the result of being cold or hot, lukewarm, and then we are going to look at this aspect of coldness, hot, and lukewarmness. Verses 26 through to 29 of chapter 18 of the book of Leviticus says this: You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations, either any of your own nation or any stranger who dwells among you. For all these abominations the men of the land have done, who were before you, and thus the land is defiled. Lest the land vomit you out also when you defile it, as it vomited out the nations that were before you. For whoever commits any of these abominations, the persons who commit them shall be cut off from among the people. What does it mean to be vomited? It means to be cut off from amongst the people. And did you know when the people were cut off? In the day of judgment. In the day of judgment, when the high priest went into the most holy place, if there were people who have not repented of their sins, the high priest came out of the most holy place and pointed the names of those who had not repented, and they were cut off from the congregation of Israel. What does it mean to be vomited? It means, friends, to lose your position amongst God's people, to be lost. Leviticus chapter 20, verses 22 to 23. You shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my judgments and perform them, that the land where I am bringing you to dwell may not vomit you out. And you shall not walk in the statutes of the nations which I am casting out before you, for they commit all these things, and notice now,